Welcome to the Music and Memories Podcast with your host, Vince Moreno.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Music and Memories with your host, me, Vince Moreno. Today is a very, very special podcast for me. I'm very honored to have the one and only legendary producer of a lot of Nashville music and maybe others we might learn. Mr. Kyle Lehning is in the house today. Y'all, please welcome him. This is going to be an awesome podcast. It's already awesome for me because we've been talking. We went to lunch a little bit ago, and half the stories there I wish we would have recorded, but maybe they're not for people to hear anyway.
Well, they're mostly about food, anyhow.
Yeah, food. Food and women and drinks. No, just kidding. Kyle, maybe start off with telling most of the people out there who might not know what a producer does in the music industry. Can you maybe sum that up?
I can try. Producer is generally sort of like a movie director. Producer is the guy that's sort of in charge of filtering all the decisions that are made during the recording process and making sure that the record is being made the way it should be and to the artist's approval. So that's usually what the producer does.
So as far as like picking what sounds need to be where, or I mean, like say the steel guitar needs to be played here. Is that like your decision, or do you leave it to the artist?
Well, it really boils down to what the producer really needs to do, what the artist doesn't do. If the artist is not a songwriter and needs help finding songs, then the producer helps the artist find songs. Right. If the artist is a great songwriter, then the producer's job is to try to be somewhat of a filter and help him decide which are the best songs to put on the record that he's written. Gotcha. And then when it comes to the actual making of the record, I always work very closely with the artist, and I make sure that the artist, whatever the artist really wants the record to feel and sound like, is what I try to make my job work around. It's not about me, because right. Nobody's going to pay to hear me sing anything.
Have you ever run into like the artist that let's say you made a decision on something, they go, man, I don't think it needs to be that way, or do they pretty much leave it in your hands? Because I mean, they've obviously hired you for that reason. So but I mean, do you ever come up to that point where somebody's kind of maybe arguing a decision with you, or do they just give you all control?
No, it usually happens collaboratively during the process. I rarely have ever gotten to the point of being at the end of the record and had an artist say, I don't like that. It's usually by the time we get to the end of the record, we've had all those discussions and decided how the direction that we're going.
Awesome. So just to name a few people, so people know who you've produced. I'm looking. We're sitting here at your studio, and I'm looking at all these records on the wall, and it's amazing to me that just to see all the different people you work with. But to name a few, who are some of the biggest ones you've probably?
Well, the biggest would be Randy Travis, and then Dan Seals, and got to work with Neil McCoy, and I've worked with Kenny Rogers. I started George Jones, made an album. I produced an album on George.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah. Did a lot of engineering for people, too, not just producing. And so early in my career, I engineered some records for Waylon and Tom Paul and the Glazer Brothers. And
very cool.
Lots of classic wonderful
and so
artists.
To a lot of people, a lot of listeners might not know that engineering is totally different than producing, correct? I mean, they probably go hand in hand, but engineering is when you're in the studio and you see all the, when you're watching music videos, you see some guy sitting behind this huge desk with all these knobs on it.
Right.
That's the engineer.
That's right.
So you do all that stuff too.
I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy one or the other more than the other?
I enjoy both. I really do. Producing is my favorite thing to do, but I love mixing records for people that I haven't produced, because I always learn something from getting to work on somebody else's record. Yeah, and it's really the engineering and mixing part of it's very creative and very fun.
Oh man, just being in the studio is such a different animal than live, performing live and stuff. But I love it too. I love being in there and creating, and then and once you hear, and it's like once you hear yourself as far as a singer goes. You hear yourself on a recording, you go, do I really sound that way? Or dang, that's not too bad, or one or the other.
Yeah.
But the other thing is you're also a musician as well, and you play piano and keyboards, correct? I mean,
Yeah,
you
I
play
play
any
some
other
keyboards.
stuff?
I play a little bit of guitar. I was a trumpet major in college, but I was probably the worst trumpet major in the history of that university, which was Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois. But
So they don't got your picture hanging on the wall there as a trumpeter or anything?
yeah, if they do, they've got a big X mark through it.
It's behind the dartboard.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you played any keys on anybody's tracks before, or when you're producing stuff?
Every once in a while, I call it an 11th hour overdub. I'll be getting near the end of the record or something, and I'll think, oh, gee, it needs this little thing here, a little thing there, and I'll do that. I'll play on something.
Well, it's easier to do that than call somebody else in to play it, right?
Usually, and if it's a really important, part of the song or something, I would not jeopardize my artist's career to have me play on it. I'd call somebody who really is a great player to do it.
Now, being a keyboard player like that, when you're tracking a session, have you ever kind of been like when you hear the other guy playing something and you hear, and being the keyboard player, you hear it in your head a certain way? Do you ever stop them and go like, I'm kind of hearing it more this way, or do you let them give them free rein to play with their creative side has?
Rarely do I rarely do I go in and say, no, do this. Every once in a while, I'll have something specific that I really want. But even if I come in the studio with something fairly specific in mind, most of the time, the wonderful musicians that we have here in Nashville will improve upon my idea.
Oh yeah,
it'll always get better.
I totally get what you're saying, because as a songwriter, I've done demos before with guys, and I go in hearing it a certain way, like, I hope they play it to what I'm hearing, and then they'll track it. I'm like, whoa, that's way better than I could have ever thought of hearing that thing, and it came out better. So I totally get that side of it. Tell us, you got any cool stories about tracking with Randy or any of these big artists that you've worked with that come to mind?
Well, it's just the main thing is just what a privilege it is to get to be in the studio with such talented musicians, on a regular basis. It's just great fun. Usually the pressure is there's really not that much pressure, because everybody knows what they're about and how to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's like a machine up here in Nashville. I mean, you go into a session, you already know what you're going to do and how to do it. And
the toughest thing, I think, is not settling too quick, because the very first thing that everybody plays is going to be pretty dadgum good.
Right.
So, to make a good record is pretty easy, but to come up with something that you might consider extraordinary, that takes an extra little push, I think, in order to get that. And I trying to think of fun stories and stuff, but gosh, I'm blanking at the moment.
Well, it's all kind of like
they'll come up.
And then
later.
sessions, it's kind of like shows. They all kind of run together. After a while, you go like, oh yeah, I think I tracked at that studio before. Because you just get people come to you all the time like, oh, remember I saw you at this one festival on the road, blah blah. And I go, okay, yeah, sure, if you say so. I don't remember every exact little thing, but what brought you to the producing side of stuff? Because you were just showing me a picture right now in your studio here of your old high school band, and you've got like two of the instruments in here in the studio that you used, back then, which is awesome. Yeah. But you started off just playing gigs like all of us normal musicians, huh?
Playing rock and roll as a teenager. Yeah, I started. I grew up in Southern Illinois in a little town called Cairo, Illinois, I literally started playing in a band when I was 13. I was the only kid in town that had a Wurlitzer electric piano. And so I got a gig playing with some guys, and we ended up playing until I graduated from high school in 1967, and we played all over Southern Illinois, and it was just, we had a band called the Mods. Very, very original. And
well, it could have been the Modulations, I guess.
It could have, that might have been better. Now you tell me.
Yeah, well... I wasn't around back then.
It was huge fun, though. I mean, it was an exciting time. The 60s were a real invention time for
yeah,
pop music.
So I've heard.
Yeah, and it was just great fun.
Did you guys ever record anything with that?
As
band?
a matter of fact, we did, and I'm loath to tell you can actually go to YouTube and hear it.
Oh God, that's what I'm doing after this.
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you in private. I'm not putting it in the podcast.
Oh, come on! Once I see it, I'll put it on Facebook.
Yeah, well, it's really funny. My youngest son Jordan, who's also a producer and an engineer in town, and a great music maker and arranger.
Oh, so it runs in the family.
It does. I have my oldest son Jason, also is very, very talented and does great work. But Jordan had taken. I had a whole stack of 45s. And that I didn't need anymore, and he said, "Can I take these and see about selling them on eBay?" And I said, "Sure." And so he took them, and he had this buddy looking through the whole thing, and he said, most of these are just like records that everybody has," he says, "but there's this one record in here," he said, "that I found on eBay that's selling for $425.
What?
And Jordan says, "Well, what's that one?" He says, "It's by this group called the Glass Threads," and that was the name of that's what the mods became, the Glass Threads, during the psychedelic era. And we did one single that we put out, and that record that he had in the batch when he looked it up was selling for $425.
Wow! So you guys had a fan out there that was
we had one nutty fan.
Well, the word fan derives from fanatic. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you engineer that stuff back then? I mean, were you into the recording process of it back then?
That's what actually got me interested in it. We went over to a little recording studio. It was actually quite good in Paducah, Kentucky. That was owned by a guy named Tommy Morris, and he had we had Ampex tape machines and an Ampex mixer and great Neumann microphones and all kinds of equipment. And we walked in there in the summer of 1967, and I smelled the tape and the acetate and I saw the microphones and everything, and I just said, "Man, that's what I want to do."
Bam! Hit you like a put of bricks.
It did. I want to be in a recording studio.
See, I never got to smell that smell. I think it was mostly digitized by the time
Yeah, it's too bad. That was exciting.
Well, I mean, just the sound of the records back then was so warm and so deep and so much better than everything's so crystal clear now and doesn't have that punch, all that stuff. So, yeah, I was totally born in the wrong era, trust me.
Yeah, well, I hear you. Yeah.
But so was that? Did you start working at that studio, or did you just start putting stuff together yourself?
No, I just ended up getting tape machines and microphones and figuring it out on my own. Trying to figure out how to make music come out of a pair of speakers. And do
you think it obviously had to have been much easier than like me? I'm learning this whole what do you call it, studio setup and stuff, and recording all that and learning how to paste stuff. And just for this podcast, it's a nightmare for me because I'm not inclined to learn that stuff. I never really wanted to, but now I'm getting thrown into it and trying to learn it. And it's probably easier than it is. I probably make it harder than it is, but back then it was probably less technology and less things to add to a record as far as effects on it goes, so it probably was easier, right?
Well, I don't know if it was easier or not, but it required a lot more invention to do it. You couldn't just open up a computer and drag a plug in. You had to use your creative. You had to figure out how to make things sound special in a very limited kind of way. So
and to me that's almost better because then you have to use your own creative mind and it's like using the ashtray on Working Man Blues or whatever that was. He's hitting ashtray. I'm like, you can just pull that soundbite on the internet now and just throw it in a record. Which, how creative is that really? You know, I mean, when you think about it.
It's true. So
you progressed from there. I mean, what? Did you make the move to Nashville once you finally felt like you're confident, or how'd that come about?
Well, I ended up going to college. I'm not necessarily proud of this, but the reason I ended up going to college was there was this thing called the Vietnam War going on.
Oh,
if you went to college, you could get a deferment, and not necessarily get drafted. So I went.
Really, you could go to college and get out of it.
Yeah, but I ended up. Long story short, I ended up, even after college, going into the Army Reserves for 6 years. So I was a medic in the Army Reserves. And,
really?
Yeah, thank God for everybody that I never got called to active duty. But it was. But I went to college and I majored in music, when I went to college, and so I had a great experience there and learned a ton.
So you learned a lot from what you ended up doing from that, you think? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was playing in a big band. I was able to write charts for the big band, and they'd play them, and I got to hear stuff. And I was recording things. I was playing in a rock and roll band. I was playing in a jazz organ quartet. I was playing B3 and then playing in a big band. So I was just music all the time.
Oh yeah,
for 4 years, and so.
And that was here in Nashville you went to college?
No,
or?
I went to Millikan in Decatur, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so, and then moved. I literally moved to Nashville the day I graduated.
Really?
From college. Yeah.
Now, did you have something lined up, or you just said, "Hey, that's where I need to be in the action"?
Well, it's a long and sort of serpentine story, but I'll tell it anyhow. But
sure.
Gosh, how do I tell this quickly? I don't know how.
That's fine. We got an hour.
Okay. So in the summer of '67.
Wake me up when you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I will.
I'll be over.
You'll be out shortly.
I'll be over this fancy couch you got over here laying down. So
yeah,
no,
it won't be long. You'll be out. So this summer of '67, we made those tapes, and my dad, who was a huge supporter, just fabulous. And my mom was too. And
that always helps.
Yeah, they were great parents. We got done with the tapes, and I was sort of like, well, I wonder what we ought to do with these now. And Dad said, well, you remember Ray Butts. And Ray Butts was a guy who lived in Cairo, and he had a hi-fi store in Cairo.
Okay.
And he was also an inventor. And in the 50s, he built a guitar amplifier called the Echosonic guitar amplifier. Now, what was interesting about that amplifier was that in the mid-50s, it had a built-in tape delay unit, like an Echoplex.
Oh, really?
But it was built into it? Built into the guitar amp. And somehow Scotty Moore, Elvis's guitar player, discovered this amplifier built in Cairo, Illinois, and took it on the road to play with Elvis. Scotty Moore shows the amplifier to Chet Atkins, who thinks it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Chet gets a hold of Ray Butts in Cairo, Illinois, and convinces him to move to Nashville to work at RCA Studios as an engineer, and also work with Chet on developing guitar pickups and various other kinds of inventions that they worked on together. So Ray was in Nashville, and my dad said, he moved to Nashville in about 62, Ray did. And my dad said, why don't you call Ray Butts and see if he'll listen to the tape? And so that's what we did.
Oh, wow.
So we took the tapes to Nashville, and Ray Butts got me and my buddy Don Dickerson, who was the saxophone player and the other singer in the band, got us meetings with two people. One of them was Billy Sherrill.
Oh, wow.
Who was running Epic Records, producing George and Tammy and all those great records. But a pretty interesting guy, and these were not country songs. These were pop things. We were there doing our best imitations of the Blues Magoos and the Seeds. For those of a certain age that might have any idea who those. Yeah, you can look them up. So Billy was kind, listened to the songs, didn't think there was anything there of special, and he was right, there wasn't.
Right, yeah.
And then the next meeting we had was with Felton Jarvis, who was Elvis Presley's producer. And, I'm like 18, and if I had known who either of these people were and what was going on, I'd have been a piece of, craziness, because I would have been so nervous. But I was too young and stupid to even get nervous. I didn't.
Oh my gosh! So you didn't really were familiar with it?
I had no idea who I was seeing or who I was talking to, and so Felton listened to the stuff, and in a very, Nashville is it was a kind city then, and it's a kind city now, I believe. But in a very diplomatic way, Felton said, there's this group called Jefferson Airplane that's out right now in 1967, and they're having big hits, and it's with a female singer. You guys ought to look for a female singer, which was, a good way of saying you
Screw
suck.
Up. Yeah.
Your vocals are not good. Yeah. So we said, okay, great. And so.
But did you take that as like, oh, wow, that's good advice? Or did you think he was just shuffling you off? Or?
No. We thought, oh, okay, that's a good idea.
Okay.
We're open to that. Let's see what happens. Okay. So Ray's daughter, Ray Butts' daughter, Katha, who grew up in Goodlettsville, knew some girls that could sing. And we auditioned 3 different female singers that came in because we were looking for somebody to sing on some stuff, and we were going to record some new songs. And the third girl that showed up to audition was named Vicky Farmer, and 3 years later, we got married.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That turned out to be good, I guess.
Yeah, it did. We had 4 kids together, and it was great. Now,
I never heard anybody auditioning for a wife before.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Holding auditions for?
Yeah, that's right. So here, the story continues. It just so happens that Vicky grew up on Liberty Lane in Madison, Tennessee, living right next door to Tom Paul Glaser.
Okay.
Yep. And Tom Paul had Tom Paul and the Glaser Brothers, which were a very wonderful country act.
Yeah.
Great singers and made some wonderful records. And they had an office downtown on 19th Avenue, and they had a recording studio in their office.
Oh, okay.
So when Vicki and I were courting, and I was spending time down here from time to time, she ended up being the receptionist there and singing demos for them in the evening.
Oh, wow.
So I would go down there and hang out and just sort of watch and look and listen and learn and stuff. And they ended up building a really cool studio with a beautiful Flickinger console and a 16-track with Dolby and all kinds of cool stuff going on there. And so I was a college kid getting to hang out in the studio, on my breaks and whenever I could come down. And do it. And so another long story short, I ended up when I moved to Nashville, Vicki and I had gotten married in 1970, and I graduated in 71.
Okay.
And we moved straight back down here, and I started hanging around that studio. And
but so you had, I didn't know that. You had more of a reason to come to Nashville.
Yes.
Because of your family now, and the music business, right?
Yeah, so right. But I always felt like Nashville was the place I wanted to be.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up there. And eventually I ended up getting a job as a recording engineer at the Glaser studio.
Oh, okay. Wow. So that's probably a step up from, you're saying that new board that they got, that was probably a big step up from the stuff you're using?
It's still my favorite sounding console.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's what they call analog, correct?
Oh, yeah.
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 And the people that are listening, the difference between analog and digital is a lot, sound-wise.
Yeah. Digital getting better all the time. It's getting better and better. It's not getting worse.
Yeah.
But there's still something special about wonderful analog sound.
Oh, man, it's just the sound of it, the sound that creates. It's amazing. And you can hear that on pretty much any record, like on a record player record, which was an LP, what do you call them?
Yeah.
A record. But the warmth on there, I just remember hearing my dad, put the needle down and you hear but then you hear the warmth of the music.
Yeah.
Man, I miss that. There's no way to capture that on a digital board. But like you said, the sound nowadays it's pretty awesome too, but there just was such a huge difference back then, I guess. But so when did like say your first so you engineered for quite a while, and then what made you make the leap to producing? Did you just kind of pick up on the sessions you were doing? You seen the people doing it, and then you thought, well, hell, I could do that too, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky. What happened? Here's another long story. What happened was when we first moved to Nashville, I couldn't get a job anywhere.
Really?
I could hang out and sort of mess around in the studio and learn some things and stuff, but there was no paying gig for me. I couldn't do that.
There probably wasn't any openings, right?
Right. I went everywhere. I went to, not just the Glazers, but I went all over town to different recording studios, knocking on doors, trying to get somebody to hire me to, just be a second engineer or something to get in there. Nothing. And so this guy from Jackson, Mississippi, a fellow named Leland Russell, showed up one day looking to buy a 16-track for his studio in Jackson, Mississippi. And he was also looking for an engineer, for somebody to come down there to work. And I had been working in the studio and doing some things on my own and learning and doing stuff. And Leland, Claude Hill, who was then Claude is the one who built the Glaser studio and showed me a lot of stuff early on. And Claude had then gone to work for a guy named Dave Harrison, built at a company called Studio Supply Company, and they were building recording studios.
Oh, wow.
And Leland had come to see them and was looking for somebody, and they suggested me.
Okay.
And so Leland and I met and ended up moving to Jackson, Mississippi to go to work in Leland's studio.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You moved there?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, in the summer of '72, and his studio was called Alpha Sound, And here's the funny thing. Living in the back of the studio, outside in the back of the studio in a school bus this is a true story, and with an electrical cord going through the back door of the studio, so there was one light bulb in the school bus.
Wow.
Was a guy named Parker McGee with his wife Allison, and she was 7 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And baking bread or a granola, making her own granola in a gas oven in the school bus.
Holy cow.
And Parker was a singer-songwriter, sort of a James Taylor singer-songwriter.
Okay.
And so he was signed to Leland's publishing company. And what ended up happening is Parker and I became very good friends, and we started learning together. And I was recording. We only had a 4-track.
Oh my gosh!
At Alpha Sound, but it was an API console. It was really good equipment, but there was only a 4-track, and so we started doing demos, trying to make demos in there on a 4-track. And
how in the world?
Well, we did. We
Do you just bounce everything?
Did some bouncing, but you also had to do a lot of stuff at once. So we had a drummer, a bass player.
Everybody had to play at the same time.
Yeah. So it was great learning stuff.
Wow.
So. And eventually the studio it wasn't going to happen. And so I ended up with being able to, the Glazers called one day when their engineer had left, and they figured since I've been gone for 4 months or 4 or 5 months working somewhere else that maybe I knew what I was doing now.
It's like legit since you moved away to do it.
Yeah. And so they asked me to come back and audition and see about working at the studio, and God bless them, they hired me to be the engineer at their recording studio, and that was in the fall of '72. And then,
well, that's pretty quick. I mean, from graduating, that's pretty fast to get a job here.
Yeah.
I mean, they call it a 10-year town for most people. I mean, you got to come here and wait 10 years to do anything happen,
Yeah, that's right. So I moved back and started working at the studio, and it literally for me, it was the most productive, great learning time of my life. It was, it could be 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. It really could.
And was that working with artists that were already big at the time, or were you?
Could be. It would have been. There were a lot of different artists that came through there. I certainly worked with Tom Paul, and I worked with a lot of other different people. Probably the most fun stuff I did were three. I did 3 Waylon Jennings albums. I did the This Time album, I did Ramblin' Man album, and I did Dreaming My Dreams.
Now, when you say you did that, you produced them or engineered them?
No, I engineered them.
Engineered them.
Yeah, and I also got to play keyboards and stuff on them. He let me play on a lot of that.
Well, I remember earlier you were saying that you played keys. Did you play with him on the road too?
I did.
Wasn't there kind of a funny story about that? Your first gig out there with him?
Oh yeah. There is a story about that. Well, what happened was Jessie, Waylon's wife, Jessie Coulter, had a hit with "I'm Not Lisa,"
right?
And what they needed was somebody to go play second keyboard with her
on that song.
Well, she was opening shows for Waylon, so she'd do like a 30-minute set.
Oh, okay.
So they had told me to learn her set. And I'd go out and play like a Fender Rhodes and an ARP string ensemble, which was just a horrible sounding, stringy thing. You
don't have one of those in here, do you, in the studio?
No, I don't.
Dang, we got to get one just for the sake of it now.
Yeah, that'd be not fun. And so I'm out on the road, and we're in Sacramento, California. And at this point, I think I'd finished at least one album with Waylon, and I played Wurlitzer electric piano and organ and even trumpet on one of Waylon's albums.
Wow.
Yeah, he was great. He would let me do just about anything.
Really?
Yeah, and I had a lot of my equipment, guitars, and he played my Fender electric 12-string on stuff, and I would try this and do that. And we had a lot of fun in the studio. So we're in Sacramento, and I'm playing with Jessie, and she's opening the show.
Yeah.
And actually, I think Tom Paul opened the show, and then Jessie came second. And Jessie played with Waylon's band, and
right.
And so it was Richie and I think Duke Goff was playing then, and Ralph Mooney on steel.
Oh yeah.
So Jessie played her show, and I'm backing her up. And when her show was over, I follow her off the stage to leave the stage, and Waylon's going to come on. And he's in the wings, and it's got that leather Telecaster on, He's in the wings, and the band's still out there. And I walked off, and he said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, done with the
done. Yeah.
I'm done." And he said, "Well, no, you're going to come play with us." And I said, "Waylon, I don't know the tunes. I said, I've never played your shows. And he said, Hoss, there's only 3 chords.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Wow.
And I went, okay. So
with 3 chords.
yeah. And he knew I played guitar, and he would, he never called a song. He never announced anything.
Oh, he would just kind of start them off, right?
Start them off and just go to the next tune and stuff. And he knew that I don't have perfect pitch, and he knew I knew how to play guitar, but he wouldn't let me see his hands.
Oh, that's on purpose. He would do that.
Yeah, he would just turn his back to me and start the song, and I'm like dinking around. Let's see,
trying to find the key.
E, A, D, G. What?
Where's he at?
Yeah. And
that's so funny. I was just watching some YouTube clips of him. I think it was Austin City Limits, and I noticed that he just started bang, bang, bang. Started his guitar off, and I was like, "Well, maybe the guys knew what he was going to do, but it kind of didn't seem like it."
Yeah,
so that's how he did his live stuff. Huh?
Yeah.
He'd just banging away on the guitar.
He'd finish one song and start another one, and you just had to fall in there.
Oh, wow. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of how, in a sense, that's kind of how Neil McCoy does his thing. When we were out playing with him, he'd almost let us know what the song title was, though.
Yeah.
He'd come on the talkback mic and say, code for City or whatever song he was doing, and we go, oh, okay, and that's what we're doing next. And sometimes he'd just be talking to people, and he'd turn back around and say, let's do this one, guys, whatever. So, but I don't know. It seems like it keeps it, I don't know about fresh, but it just makes it more fun that way. Because when you get out and do these shows where they have a set list and all that, and it's almost like a lot of times if the set list's not there, and I should have it memorized anyway because it's the same one every time, And if the set list ain't there, you're looking down like, oh no, what's next?
Right.
But it just kind of leaves that kind of not surprise effect, but kind of in a way, when it's live like that. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. So you managed to pull the show off.
I wasn't having fun that night.
You're a nervous wreck.
I was sweating bullets, but I got through it, and I played. I guess about 6 months I played on the road with them from time. Most of it when Jesse went out, but then it started turning out to he wanted me to come out when he was doing stuff.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was huge fun. He was great. I loved Waylon. I absolutely loved him. Probably the biggest compliment I've been paid as a professional in the business was when I think Waylon's last album he did was a live album recorded at the Ryman, and Blake Chansey had produced it, and they had mixed the album twice, and Waylon hated the way, for some reason, hated the way it sounded.
Really?
And Blake was at his wit's end, didn't know what to do, and Waylon said, why don't you ask Kyle if he'll mix this, because he knows what this is supposed to sound like.
Oh,
so
snap.
I got to mix that record, and I would take mixes over to the house to Waylon to play them for him, and we'd sit there and talk, and it was just, magic. I loved Waylon.
You're listening to Music and Memories with Vince Moreno.
So do you think that, or not do you think, but did you like the live performancing or the playing live versus the studio, or did you?
Well, it's two totally different things. I knew that the road life wasn't going to be for me. I really loved being in a recording studio. That's right. That's what I really felt like I was meant to do and where I wanted to be.
Well, you were. I mean, just from your track record, your history, man, it's nuts. I mean, like I said, looking at all the records on your wall, and it's like amazing because I go, oh man, I remember listening to that so much, not knowing that you are the reason that is that way. The reason that it sounds that way, which is so cool to me. It's mind boggling that. Like these guys probably, I mean, you guys are just chum with all these artists, right? They'd come in and, hey, Kyle, what are we working on today type of stuff, right? I mean, were a lot of them your friends too? Or?
Sure. I mean, when you spend that much intense time together, there's no other way. There's no way not to get close to one another.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear a lot of life stories and
oh yeah, because I mean you're hanging out 12 hours sometimes.
Well, I always felt that was diminishing returns. When I was early, I would do really, really long days, and I realized after a while that the next day suffered.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I would try to do somewhere between 6 to 8 hours a day. It was max when it started, and that I just felt like the energy was better long term if we did that. Sometimes if you got up against a deadline and you had to push it, it would go longer. But most of the time, it was pretty reasonable hours.
So did I see a lot of times in history, you're reading an article or something, and somebody will say, "Yeah, well, we took a year off to write and record," and then they say, "Well, we were in the studio for 6 months doing a project." Do people really take that long?
Well, I never took. Well, I take it back. There have been albums that have taken a long time. I made some pop records in the 70s with England Dan and John Ford Coley.
Oh, yeah.
Really Love to See You Tonight.
You did that? You produced that? Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, I did their records. And that was Dan. England Dan was Dan Seals.
Right.
And so that's how I met Danny. And the guy, Parker McGee, who was living in the school bus, he wrote I'd Really Love to See You Tonight.
No kidding.
And he wrote Nights Are Forever Without You.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's how that connection happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so...
See, that's the cool little stuff about Nashville that I love, because, like, I have a buddy here, and then next thing you know, you're doing this stuff. It's like, oh, yeah, well, my buddy's the one that wrote that song, or so-and-so played on that song, and, oh, yeah, well, we've known each other since high school. You know, I just love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it more of a more than just business in my eyes. It really does. And I think that's where you get a lot of the special sounds out of it and stuff. But I'm sorry, continue with your...
Well, we made a record in England Dan and John Ford Coley and I made a record in L.A. in 1978, which had a hit on it called Love Is the Answer. But that album took us about almost 9 months. It was really tough sledding. It was hard.
And why? I mean, for instance,
mainly because I wasn't. I was producing the record out there. It's the first time It wasn't the first time. It was the second time I'd made records in L.A. And I just wasn't an L.A. producer.
So it was a different vibe?
It was a different thing, and we tried to do things in a less expensive way, and we figured out after we'd spent that money that was the wrong way to do it, and we had to go back and redo things, and it was a long, arduous task. But we got a big record out of it, which was important.
Yeah.
But it
so
was
it's kind
difficult.
of like trial by fire, learning as you go type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's why you say it takes. I mean, obviously,
That
some
one
records
did.
you're trying to be. I guess some of them are trying to be more artsy or whatever, and trying to get their
that one
point
was
across.
that was a kind of a comedy of errors, just
Okay.
mistakes. But most of the records, sometimes it'll take from the time I start a record till the time I end it. Especially with some of the Randy Travis records, it would be almost a year. But that would be because we were waiting for songs.
Oh, really?
We'd go cut 2 or 3 songs because we really liked those, but we didn't have 3 more that we loved. And we'd wait until the next batch of songs would show up, and then his schedule would allow, and we'd go in and record those. And, and sometimes it would take a while to get a record done just because we were waiting for songs. Okay,
so I guess there's a lot more that goes behind making the record than people think, like you're saying, waiting for songs. So I guess a lot of people would just think, like, in the public eye, they probably think, well, they get all their songs. They get 12 songs right off the bat, and they go, let's just go in that day and record them.
Some guys seem to be able to do that.
Sometimes it happens that way, right?
That's right. We just didn't. It took us a long time to find songs that seemed to really work for Randy.
And not only that, but like when you're working on a certain album, you want all the songs to kind of flow with each other.
Correct.
So that's understandable to say, well, we got these 2, but man, there's nothing out right now that we're getting sent.
Right.
Because, I mean, publishers would they send the songs to you or Randy first, or...
Well, they would,
mostly the artist first, right?
They would send them to me. They would send them to Martha Sharp, who was Randy's A&R person at Warner Brothers. She would get a lot of songs.
Oh, I've heard that name before.
Yeah, she was wonderful, and she was a great song person and a real Randy advocate. And
I think she had something to do with Theron Tippin too. I remember him saying
maybe
her name, but something along the lines, something about a song or something, being pitched to him. But When you would do these like high profile artist sessions, was it the label that hired you that they were on, or was it the artist that would say, "I want Kyle to come produce this"? Or
it was always a mutual agreement. The record company might reach out to me and say, would you be interested in working with an artist? Or the artist might say, I really want to work with this producer. And it was always, everybody had to sign off on it.
But just so people know, like, you didn't work for that label. Like, you were your own entity, right?
I was independent record producer.
Okay. And have you always been? Was it always an independent
except
thing?
for a couple of years in the late 70s when I worked for Atlantic Records. I was a staff producer for Atlantic. And then in 92, I was given an opportunity to be the president of Asylum Records, and I ran Asylum.
Did you really?
From 92 to 98.
Oh, wow.
For 6 years. Yeah,
Dang, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was an adventure.
I'm still learning so much about you, Kyle. I feel like I knew so much already, but actually it's funny because most of the time that I see you, you're playing keyboards in Pensacola with our mutual friend Ricky Lee Phelps, who was from the Kentucky Hunters, which I'll be doing a podcast with him pretty soon too. So
great.
we'll probably tell some lies about you on that one too, or I'll learn even more about you on that one.
Yeah, my connection to Ricky goes back to Asylum because he and his brother.
Oh, really? That was a good segue, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah, he and his brother Doug had a group called Brother Phelps.
Yeah.
And I signed them to Asylum, and they made 2 records for us. And
that was after the Headhunters, right? They was doing
Ricky
their own thing.
left the Headhunters, and then he convinced Doug to come do this thing with him. And
right.
they made 2 records, really good records.
Yeah, I remember those were great. Great records.
Yeah.
I don't know if they didn't really get that much airplay as they should have, but
no, there were complications, but it was a great experience, and so Ricky and I became friends through that, and then reconnected again years later down in Pensacola, and we've been having a blast.
Yeah, man,
playing at the Sandshaker.
Go see you guys at the Sandshaker. What is it? The Electric Mullet.
Electric Mullet. That's
man,
right.
If you guys are ever down in Pensacola, you go see these guys because it's awesome. It's mostly rock and roll, and it's rock. It's a rocking band. Everybody in that band is very talented and really good. We were just talking about the guitar player earlier at lunch, and
Dave Glencoe,
has incredible tone and just the band, and it's fun. I mean, you're in Pensacola, so you're gonna have fun anyway. You know, it's kind of a halfway indoor and outdoor venue.
Yep.
I mean, you guys are playing in undercover, but that's that's a great time if anybody's there. You guys play certain Sundays, right? And then you're only there on certain times too, right?
Yeah, it's the first and third Sunday of every month, and I usually I can only make it like once a month, and I usually try to make it the first Sunday of the month.
Well, you're in for a treat if anybody ever.
It's huge fun.
It is, and Ricky's playing bass, which most people probably don't.
And singing great.
Yeah, oh God, he's got such a distinctive voice. He's one of my favorite voices. Mm-hmm. And growing up in the '90s, listening to the Headhunters too. I always tell him every time I see him, like, I know you get tired of hearing this, but man, I really, really dig you. It's like he just got that vibe. Like, man, I just want to be your friend.
He's a great guy.
Well, I never knew you did the. So you had your own label. I never did. You sign up? How many? Or who did you sign?
Well, it was a weird thing. It was like Asylum was part of the Elektra music group, Elektra in New York, and Bob Krasnow was the chairman of Elektra, and he hired me to run this record label, and we were going to be a sort of boutique country label, and it's as close to killing myself as I ever got was when realizing that wasn't going to work, because we were making records that I thought were really cool, and they were just digging themselves a hole and burying themselves. It just
really?
Yeah, it wasn't working. And so
now, why you say it wasn't working? Because
it was just too left of center. It just we were trying things that were
you're trying to be different, but it was too different.
It was too different.
Really?
Yeah, and we were way ahead of the Americana thing. The records we were making were more set in that kind of world, and there wasn't. That world didn't really exist at that time.
I was going to say, like those albums now that you did back then probably would be huge.
Maybe I don't know, but it just wasn't working, and so we shifted gears and started trying to do stuff more mainstream, and that's when we signed. We had Brian White, and we had Lila McCann, and we had Kevin Sharp, and we had some records that started to do
Kevin.
okay. Yeah,
I was just listening to his stuff on the way down here to see you today. I miss him, man. We became really good friends right before he passed away.
Yeah,
I'd go stay at his house in Spring Hill and hang out with it. Well, his wife was Neil McCoy's sister-in-law.
That's right.
They were both sisters that they were married to, whatever. But and that's actually I got to meet Kevin and I played a cruise with him one time. His guitar player couldn't make it, and he said, "Hey, could you come play this thing?" I said, "Hold on, let me check the schedule with Neil. Make sure I'm free." And we were just getting back from a USO tour with Neil, Baghdad and Kuwait and all that stuff. And I said, "Yeah, I can go." So I was so jet lagged when we got on the plane to go to that cruise. But he was such a gem of a person, man. He was so nice, just a genuine hearted guy, man. And I miss him. He had a lot of music left in his arsenal, I guess you could say. We wrote a couple tunes together, but nothing ever came out of it. We just kind of did it to kill time. But so and you said Lila McCann, was that Down with the Blackbird? Did you do that record?
I didn't do it. I signed her though. And because of that song, which I thought was
so she had already had that out before you.
No. She had done a demo of it. And with Mark Spiro, who was her producer and also wrote the tune.
Yeah.
And I think there were like 8 or 9 songs on a cassette that they sent me.
Cassette. And for those kids listening out there, that's a little plastic thing with tape in it. You used to stick it.
And the last song on the cassette was "Down Came a Blackbird," and I thought, now that's interesting. I like that, and so and she was, I think she was only 13.
Yeah, she was young. She was like, I remember thinking like the Leanne Rimes thing, like she was really young coming out, and good singer, and all that.
Yeah, and we ended up selling her albums, sold platinum, it did well.
And then the Brian White stuff, was that the first album set he had that you had him on there? Mm-hmm. Oh wow,
yeah, we
that was some good records, man.
Yeah, those were Brian's great. We had a great run with him.
Did you produce those and engineer?
Billy Joe Walker Jr. and I produced those together. Yeah, Billy Joe actually found Brian, brought him to the label. We developed him, and Brian's a super talent. And great
singing
fun.
His butt off, man, back then.
Yeah,
those albums were like, I remember when, because I was in a house band back in Arizona, and we'd always try to stay current with the new stuff that was coming out. And back then, we didn't mind learning songs every week because it was such good stuff. These days I haven't learned this song in decades. You know what I mean? Decades. But back then, I remember going, "Holy crap! How am I going to hit that note that dude? So much for pretending." All that stuff. I was like, "Holy cow!" But luckily, my voice changed, and I could still hit it back then.
Good.
My voice didn't drop till after that. But man, that's too cool. After the Asylum thing, did you just kind of figure like, man, that's too much. That's too much to try and run a label, or?
Well, it just ended up being a combination of things, and I just started to get worn out with all the responsibilities, and
the
I wasn't
end of it, and
I'm a record producer and not a business guy, and it just got to be too much for me, and so we parted company in '98, and I went back in the studio and just started producing people and hanging out and messing around with music again.
What's your what do you think is your favorite song that you've produced ever?
Oh gosh,
I'm sure there's like a top 20 or something. But
there are a lot. There are all kinds of songs that are special to me and important to me.
What's one that comes to mind, and then tell me why it's special to you?
Well, there's some of the songs. Some of the songs that I love the most aren't hits.
Right.
There's songs,
I understand that. Sure.
There's a song that I recorded with Randy Travis on an album a long time ago, and it's a Al Anderson song. It's called "Right on Time," and it's one of my favorite things we've ever done. And I don't think it's ever even been a single.
Right.
But
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song and a beautiful sentiment and stuff. And when I just got married in July, and I would send Cynthia songs every once in a while, and I sent her this one, and she loved the song, and we had it. It was played it during the wedding and stuff.
Oh wow, really?
And
so it really does mean a lot to you then.
Yeah, it was real special.
And why? I mean, just because of the lyric, or just
with both of them.
Was it a time in your life when you were doing something that like takes that song takes you back to that, or?
No, it's just Randy's performance of it and the song itself and just the whole approach. I'm just really proud of that piece of work, and I love it. It's just a great song. But, I've been lucky to be involved in a lot of songs that have turned out to be hits for people.
Yeah, you have. You've been involved in a lot.
One of my favorites was Dan Seal's "Everything That Glitters Is Not Gold."
Oh yeah, that's a killer tune.
Yeah, Danny. I remember Dan and I were working together a lot, and he came in the studio one day and had a cassette, and he said, "Oh, I wrote this song with Bob McDill." He said, "I think it's pretty cool." He said, "I don't think it's a hit." And he played it, and I played it.
You said it will be when I'm done with it, huh?
Well, I played it, and I said, "I think you might be wrong about that, Danny. I think." And so I love that song. I think that's
a great tune.
Yeah, he and Bob wrote some wonderful tunes together, and so that was fun building that song, putting that together. And
it's mind-boggling to me that, of course, I'm just being in the music biz, I guess you could say, or being a musician and a singer.
And you're a great one.
Wow, thank you. But it's weird because like all these songs that you're talking about, I've covered, at least one time or sang somewhere, and it just boggles my mind to know who was involved in creating that. I mean, that's what's so cool to me is so and so played a guitar on that, and oh yeah, so and so wrote that, and just all the stuff that goes behind a song. And I don't think people realize that they just think somebody wrote that, somebody sang it, and bam, it's on the radio.
Yeah.
But there's so much. It's just like live music too. There's so much that goes behind setting up a show that day, to performing the show that night, to getting there, to doing all that stuff. It's just so much hard work, but at the same time, it's a passion for both of us. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's just looking around your studio here. I mean, I know it's a passion because you got a whole studio in here that most people, they have to go to record at a place like that. Like they come to Nashville and they go to we used to be RCA and all that stuff like that. And now, I mean, a lot of people are going to kind of home studios like that, right? I mean, you've got a full-fledged studio here, but it's not like some guys just have a computer screen and a couple speakers. You've got the whole what to do here. Is there, since you're an independent guy like that, can just anybody hire you to produce their record, or do you have to go through certain channels?
No, I'm available if it feels like a good fit.
Okay.
If the music is interesting to me, if the singer is interesting to me, I'm available.
Yeah.
But I'm not in a situation where I'm actively out there pursuing.
Right.
But
let's just say, and you don't have to give out info or anything, but if somebody wanted to say, like, man, I really want, like they listen to a record today, and they hear this Neil McCoy song or whatever, and they go, who produced that? And they go, oh wow, this guy Kyle Lehning produced that. I really want to do a project with him. How would they go about even contacting you, or can they?
That's a really good question. I guess they can. I don't know if there's a Wikipedia. I know they could do that. I don't know. I mean, because Facebook and
the reason I ask is like because a guy like me, just singing in bars and doing whatever, doing my thing, I would never think to that perspective to be like, man, I sure wish that this Grammy winning or ACMs, I see all your awards on there. Like would they even pay attention to a guy like me, or because some guys you think, oh, it's a paycheck, they would do it for that. But like you're saying, you're not in a position like you're not out there looking for the next session just so you can pay your electric bill or whatever.
No,
but
I'm lucky in that regard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm just thinking like, a lot of guys come to Nashville and they either can afford it or they're just like their heart's determined on they want to get you to produce an album. I mean, and there's certain channels they got to go through to do that. I mean, I'm not trying to push you out on work, but hey, maybe you'll get a session out of this. I don't know.
Well, people tend to they seem to be able to find me if they want me.
Yeah.
That's usually the way it happens. I don't know. It's
just so cool, man, and I know that we kind of became friends over the last 3 years or so, but it's just, to me, it's like I said, it's an honor to just sit here and hear these stories. And like I say, look, I just keep looking at your wall over there with all those CDs on it. I'm like, God, there's so much good stuff up there. I mean, Neil McCoy, Dan Seals, Montgomery Gentry. I can't see them all from here, but can you remember everybody you've worked with? Probably not.
No, I mean, go to allmusic.com. My wife is the one who started putting all those up on the wall. She thought it would be fun to do that.
It is. That's cool.
It is fun, and it's a little overwhelming even for me to look at all that work. But there's a lot of stuff.
It's hard to be hard.
I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to write them all down and then go like, oh yeah, I forgot I worked with that guy.
Yeah,
probably. Right?
When I look at all music, there are a lot of things on there I forgot that I've worked on. One of the again, talking about records that weren't hits, but special. I got to make a record with Phil Everly in the 1980s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from the Everly Brothers. And
doesn't he live here in town?
He lived in Columbia, Tennessee. His brother Don lives here.
Well, I've seen one of them. I can't remember which one it was,
it's
but
Don.
Seen him walking down Broadway one time or something.
Yeah.
Looked through the window like, oh crap, that's one of the Everly Brothers out there.
Yeah, that's Don. Don lived in town. Phil lived in Columbia. Phil passed away about 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
One of the neatest, best, most wonderful people I've ever worked with.
Really?
Yeah, just awesome. Just awesome.
Was anybody you ever worked with like just somebody you just go, God, if I don't have to see him ever again or her? You don't have to name names, but did that you ever come across
not
that?
Not really. I've worked with some people that are more difficult than others for one reason or another. But not really. Most of the people I've been fortunate enough to work with have been really solid and good folks and dedicated to what they were doing. And, very rarely did I ever run into a real problem.
Oh, that's cool. That's really, you're lucky in that sense, too.
I think so.
I mean, really.
Yeah, I'll take luck.
Yeah. What are you doing are you working on any big projects right now?
Yeah, I've been working on a very interesting record. I just got called out of the blue. Gary Pachosa, Gary?
I don't think so.
Gary's a producer engineer. He's done a ton of Alison Krauss records and other stuff. Gary's a very talented guy. He works for Concord Music Group. In about 3 years, he called me out of the blue and said, have you ever heard of this guy named Michael Feinstein? And I do know who Michael Feinstein was, like sort of a great American songbook singer from New York. And just, guys steeped in great traditional old music and stuff. And just a really neat guy. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, he wants to make a record in Nashville. And I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. And he said, and he wants to do a duets record. It was like, okay. And he wants to do it with kind of country artists and stuff. I thought, wow, okay. And he said, and he wants to do it all George Gershwin material.
What?
Yeah, and that's what I thought. Like, wow, how is that going to work? That's really. Let me think about this. So I thought about it, and Michael's a piano player, very good piano player. But I just thought, Willie had just done a Gershwin tribute record and won a Grammy, and he and Buddy Cannon and Matt Rollins had produced it, and it did really well. And I just thought, man, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
they just did that, So I started thinking about it, and I started thinking, well, what if there was no piano on it? What if it was really kind of an acoustic Americana, approach?
Oh, wow.
Really kind of sparse but stripped down and very sort of acoustic-y and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I called Michael and had the first conversation I had with him on the phone. I pitched him that idea of like, what if it's really all based around acoustic instruments and stuff? And he loved the idea.
Wow.
And so we started on it 3 years ago. And it took us that long to get the schedule straight with other singers and everything. And the record's almost done. We have one vocal left to finish it, and it'll be done. So I think it'll be out in late summer, early fall this year.
Oh, cool.
And it's turned out, it's beautiful. I just really love it.
That's
great.
interesting because, piano is so heavily in that type of music that you're saying. So to pull it out is...
Yeah. Well, the band is, the core band was... it's Brian Sutton on acoustic guitar, who's a genius if you don't know him. Brian and Victor Krause on upright bass. Yeah. Aubrey Haney on fiddle.
Oh yeah.
Jeff Taylor on accordion from the Time Jumper.
I love Jeff, man. Yeah. He's so good.
And Steve Brewster's playing drums, and that's the core band, and then it's surrounded by other Paul Franklin and Brent Mason and Kerry Marks and some other people are playing other ancillary instruments on it.
Yeah.
But that's basically
bunch of nobodies.
Yeah. And so the duet partners are Dolly Parton, Roseanne Cash, Amy Grant, Alison Krauss, Mandy Barnett singing all the tunes.
Love Mandy.
She's great.
She's probably one of my all-time favorite female vocalists.
I signed her to Asylum.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love her.
Mandy.
She's
Me
awesome.
Too. Yep. And there's Lyle Lovett, Brad Paisley, Ronnie Millsap.
Dang. How many songs is going to be on this thing?
I think there's 11. 11?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to be looking out for this summer, you're saying, huh?
Yeah. And then this last summer, Skip Ewing, who's a great singer-songwriter, called me out of the blue and wanted to make a record. And he and I went in the studio the 1st of July and finished an album about mid-October. And it's being shopped right now and looked at, and I'm really proud of that. So that's been a lot of fun.
He's killer. He's such a good writer.
Great. Well, great singer and great guitar player.
Was it late 90s or early 90s? He had a record out, I think? And
he had a couple of records out.
Yeah. I remember him having a single out that I'm pretty sure I covered it at some point or another. But he's incredible.
Super talented.
Yeah, very
So we
good.
had a lot of fun with that.
Well, heck, you're still busy then.
Huh? I'm still
because I know you live part-time in Florida, too.
Yeah.
With your beautiful wife over there.
I do.
And that's why I said today, I was driving to the rain, come over here like, what in the heck are you doing in this weather, man? You live in Florida, dude. What's going on?
Well, I'm headed back tomorrow.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, man, such a treat for me to sit down with you, Kyle. I hope maybe in the future we can do a part 2 or something because I know you got a lot more stuff to tell. But for the meantime, thank you so much for allowing me the time to sit down with me and share some of your stuff. And like I said, it's an honor to sit with you. I know what I was going to ask you. Like awards and stuff like that. Do you have a Grammy?
I have 3.
You have 3 Grammys?
Yeah. But who's counting?
Well, I didn't get to see those. I want to see those. Are they here?
Yeah, I'll show them to you.
I want to see them.
Okay.
And I know you got some ACMs up on the shelf up there. And then what else is there? CMAs?
Yeah, ACMs, CMAs, Grammys, Doves. There's
you name it. You want it.
I've been fortunate, mostly with Randy. And we've had a wonderful long-term relationship, and that doesn't always happen in the business.
No, yeah, you're right. Is there anything that you hadn't accomplished that you think, man, before I die, I'd love to?
I honestly don't have a bucket list. The thing for me is I just want to be engaged in whatever it is I'm doing. Interested in it, and so far I've been lucky enough to have things pop up from time to time.
That's awesome. You're so blessed to have that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm jealous of you, man. It's awesome. Just success, and then having the love for it to still do it, and then like you're saying, I mean, you can pick and choose and say, yeah, my heart's into this one. I think I will do it, or no, I'm going to be at the beach that week for the next 6 months.
Yeah, it's an interesting time because the easiest thing for me to say when somebody calls is no.
Yeah.
So I really have to think about things when somebody calls, because it is fun to be in the studio. I do really enjoy it. So
yeah.
So it's good, and I can't wait to see you again on stage. You are
well. I wish that I could afford it and had the time to have you produce, man, because that would be one of my bucket list things. So I'm going to make that happen.
We can make a deal.
I'm going to make that happen one day. I'll trade you a podcast for a session.
Yeah, well, I love watching you do your thing.
Oh, thanks, man.
You're and I bet you must know 10,000 songs.
I've probably forgotten that many for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny. I played a gig last night with some guys, and I was just kind of playing guitar, being a sideman type of thing. And this other guy was playing bass in front, and he was calling off all these songs from. You probably actually produced half of the stuff we did last night, but he was calling all these songs off that I remember doing when I was in high school. And I was going, oh man, I haven't played that song since. Oh, this is so much fun, because I was like, at one time I used to sing this song, but I was trying to remember the guitar licks, the signature licks on it. But I just, I've sang so many that I've, forgotten that many too. And now I just kind of do the same stuff every time I play. But I like bringing out the old stuff that I hadn't done in so long, because it just, it's just like, it's memories really. It's 3 minutes of memories for me, because I remember exactly where I was when I was singing it and all that stuff. But, well, it's been a treat, man. I won't take up any more of your time, but I do look forward to maybe sitting down with you again, or having you come out to a gig, or getting on a session with you. That'd be amazing. But the multi-talented Kyle Lehning, everybody, thanks so much for joining me here on Music and Memories. And as always, everybody, go on social media and follow me on there, Vince Moreno Music, Facebook, Instagram. I don't get on Twitter much, but I'm still on there anyway. But make sure you share this episode on your social media and send it to everybody that you know, and get this out there, and we'll make Music and Memories a big deal, and that way I can afford to do a session with Kyle Lehning. Thanks again, guys, and stay tuned for the next one.
Thanks for joining us for the latest installment of Music and Memories with your host, Vince Moreno. Visit vincemoreno.net for show dates, music, and more.